Have you ever been walking through a graveyard and wondered what stories could be hiding, which fascinating historical figures may be there? Some gravestones tell a whole story, writing out the details of a life lived. Others are simple, and some, like this one up here, are later additions that reflect the impact an individual had on history. James Morrow Walsh was born in Prescott on May 22, 1840. He had numerous jobs over the years, but always seemed to be drawn to the military, and graduated from the Royal Military College in Kingston in 1862. As part of the Prescott Rifles, he became a lieutenant, then a captain of the Grenville Regiment during the Fenian raids in 1866. James married Mary Mowat of Brockville in 1870, and soon the couple had their only child, Cora. Despite working full-time as a hotel keeper, James was still part of the militia and was promoted to major. Then in 1873, the family moved to Brockville. That same year, John A. Macdonald created the Northwest Mounted Police to have an armed force in the new western frontier of Canada. Walsh was one of the first to sign up and one of the ones responsible for recruitment in Ontario. He then led the first group of 40 recruits to Lower Fort Garry, Manitoba on a 3-week journey, arriving in early November. In 1875, Major Walsh set up Fort Walsh in the Cypress Hills in Saskatchewan, where he and his men made regular patrols through the area to keep the peace. Something that was potentially threatening to this peace occurred in May of 1877. That was when Sioux Chief Sitting Bull crossed into Canada with 5,000 of his people after the events of Little Bighorn in the United States. Walsh, who had been away at the time, rushed back and got together a small group of his men who entered the camp unarmed, something that had never happened before with Sitting Bull. Over the next few years, Walsh and the Northwest Mounted Police worked hard to keep the peace between white settlers, Sitting Bull and his people, and other indigenous groups in the area. They would bring in food when the buffalo became scarce, they broke up whiskey smuggling rings, and they stopped raids from coming on either side of the border. Walsh had orders to move Sitting Bull and his people back into the United States, something that he never did, and he claimed that Sitting Bull would move his people when they felt safe to do so. Walsh's annoyance with slow-moving politics in Ottawa and his take-charge attitude did make him enemies, including Prime Minister Macdonald, who wanted Walsh out of the way so that the Sioux people could be moved forcibly back into the United States. Macdonald decided that it was time for Walsh to be transferred away from Sitting Bull and thought it was time to get Walsh really out of the Northwest Mounted Police. So, in 1880, Major Walsh was sent to Fort Capella in Saskatchewan, and then sent on leave back to Brockville and was not brought back to work until 1881 when Sitting Bull had returned to the United States. Walsh left the Northwest Mounted Police in 1883 due to political pressure after 10 years of service. In 1884, Walsh retired to Brockville with his family and purchased 207 King Street East, which he named Indian Cliff after a bluff in the Cypress Hills, and that to this day has a historic plaque out front. In Brockville, he became one of the founders and the first presidents of the Brockville Rowing Club, and the Walsh Trophy for war canoes is on display in their lobby and still used for dragon boat races. In 1897, he was reluctantly brought out of retirement to be the first commissioner of the Yukon during the Klondike Gold Rush. But after a year, Walsh resigned and went back home to Brockville, where he spent most of his time on the St. Lawrence River on his steam yacht. After coming home, he was attacked politically in Parliament, causing the Brockville Evening Recorder to write an article in his defense titled, "A Brockville Man is Good Enough for Brockville." On July 25, 1905, Major James Walsh passed away at 65 of a heart attack in his home. He was laid to rest here in the old Protestant cemetery in one of the largest funerals Brockville had ever seen. Veterans of the Fenian Raids, South Africa, the 41st Battalion of the Brockville Rifles, marched with his horse behind a gun carriage that carried his casket with his sword, helmet, and medals on top. All businesses on King Street closed, and thousands of people lined King Street as the funeral parade of over 100 carriages passed by on their way to the cemetery. For many years, 2 white pines and a boulder with the name Walsh was all the marker that Major James Walsh and his family had. Then, in 2002, a service was held and a marker was placed on the grave commemorating Walsh's service in the force. Today, we can see the large Walsh monument and the 3 gravestones that are there representing Walsh, his wife, and his daughter. Join us for more interesting stories from among the stones next time. Thank you, everyone.